The morning sun spilled golden light across the valley, glinting off de-soaked pine needles and casting long shadows across my cabin's hand-sawn deck. A light breeze carried the scent of cedar, wood smoke and liberation, exactly what I'd been chasing when I left the city 2 years ago. The cabin wasn't just a retreat. It was a declaration. A solar-powered, rainwater harvesting, composting toilet-equipped middle finger to every HOA I'd ever dealt with in my career. I was halfway through mounting the second 400-watt solar panel on the roof when I saw the first sign of trouble. A white Ford Explorer, pristine and pretentious, eased down the gravel road like it owned the land beneath its tires. The license plate bracket read, "Sunset Hills HOA, we keep it classy." My stomach tightened. Not in fear, I had every permit, diagram and blueprint laminated and filed, but in anticipation. I had expected a confrontation eventually. I just hadn't expected it before lunch. The SUV came to a full stop at the edge of my driveway. The driver's door opened, and out stepped the human embodiment of a clipboard, a tall, thin man in a beige polo, tucked into khakis, sunglasses perched like a hawk's visor across his face. He approached slowly, deliberately, like a man who thought the power of his presence alone could make people reconsider their life choices. "Morning!" I called down from the roof. "Need help finding something?" He ignored the greeting. "I'm Howard Keller, president of the Sunset Hills Homeowners Association." I squinted. "Ah, and I'm not in Sunset Hills." He paused. "You're adjacent. Technically within our visual zone." I nearly dropped my screwdriver. "Your visual zone?" Yes. It's the zone of influence our community maintains for aesthetic preservation. It extends 500 feet from any shared road boundary. That includes this area. I slid down the ladder and landed with a soft thud. This is my land. 5 acres, zoned rural residential. And this cabin? Completely compliant. I built it by the book. In fact, I helped write the book. His head tilted, calculating. "What do you mean?" Well, I mean, I was on the county's Rural Development Advisory Board. I co-wrote Section 8 of the zoning code, including the section on renewable energy installations. That stopped him for half a second. But only half. "Nevertheless," he said, drawing out the word like he'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "Any exterior installations visible from the road require HOA review." I blinked. "I'm not in your HOA." "Be that as it may," he sniffed. "We've had complaints. Your panels will affect property values. They're industrial looking." I held up the solar panel like a trophy. "You mean this thing that quietly generates electricity?"
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
"You mean this thing that quietly generates electricity without producing a single ounce of carbon dioxide? This is your threat?" Howard folded his arms. "We'll be filing a formal complaint. You can expect a cease and desist." "Great. Address it to the County Zoning Committee," I said, brushing off my hands. They'll love the irony. I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. The next morning, just as I was wiring the inverter to the battery array inside the utility shed, I heard the unmistakable sound of a diesel engine and tires crunching gravel with authority. A county sheriff's SUV pulled into the driveway, lights off, but clearly in official mode. 2 deputies stepped out. The lead one, Sergeant Mendez, looked familiar. I remembered him from a town hall I'd attended last year. Sharp guy, no nonsense, and surprisingly level-headed. He approached with a clipboard in hand and a cautious look on his face. "Morning, sir. Got a report of unauthorized construction. Solar installation, possibly in violation of code. Also something about threatening behavior." I raised an eyebrow. "Threatening? The only thing I threatened is peak utility rates." He cracked a slight grin, then got serious again. "We're just here to check everything's above board. Do you have permits?" I opened the shed, pulled out a binder the size of a phone book, and handed it over. Not only do I have permits, but you'll find all plans, approvals, and compliance certificates signed by the county engineer and zoning director. I drafted most of the compliance language myself. He flipped through the binder. His eyes paused on one page. Wait a minute. You're Evan Carter? As in the Carter Addendum? That's me, I said. The same Carter who made it legal to install renewable energy systems without HOA interference if the land is zoned RR5 and the dwelling is more than 100 feet from any HOA boundary. Mendez turned to his partner. Well, this just got interesting. Sergeant Mendez paced slowly across the gravel, scanning the panels I'd already mounted. He wasn't hostile, just thorough, like a man who knew how fast HOA complaints could spiral into lawsuits. His deputy, a younger guy with a buzz cut and a clipboard, lingered by the shed. "You've really got everything here," he said, flipping through my binder. Inspection photos, county seal, time-stamped submissions. You even included the public hearing notes. I nodded. Pages 83 to 107. They're public record, but I like to be thorough. Sergeant Mendez gave a low whistle. And you wrote most of this code? Me and 2 others. We built it to encourage off-grid development, provided it didn't impact neighboring parcels or violate health and safety rules. Which you haven't. Mendez added, closing the binder. So far, this looks cleaner than most commercial permits I've seen. I let out a small breath. Not relief vindication. Just then, a second vehicle screeched to a halt behind the deputies. Same white Ford Explorer. Same HOA decal. And out stepped Howard Keller, this time with 2 additional passengers. A woman in her 60s, with a neck scarf so tight it looked like it was holding her judgment in, and a man with the permanent scowl of someone whose power peaked at middle management. "This is an acted investigation," Mendez warned, holding up a hand. But Howard stormed forward, finger jabbing the air like it owed him rent. "Officers, that man is in violation of our neighborhood standards. He's building illegal infrastructure and threatening the harmony of our community." The scarfed woman chimed in. "I seen men like him before. Tech bros. They think solar panels make them better than the rest of us." The scowling man added, "It's visual pollution. I can see those black monstrosities from my upstairs."
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Visual pollution. I can see those black monstrosities from my upstairs bathroom. I stared at them in disbelief. "You do realize I'm a half-mile away from your subdivision, right?" Howard waved a paper in front of Mendez. "This is a notice of community violation. Section the 2nd of April 12. Unauthorized exterior modifications." Mendez didn't even take the paper. "Sir, this isn't HOA-governed land." Technically, Howard started, but I cut him off. "There's no technically. I'm outside your jurisdiction. In fact, I'm outside your county-defined HOA boundary. Section 8, subsection G, paragraph 4. Properties zoned RR5 and located more than 250 feet from a deeded HOA boundary are exempt from association oversight unless expressly agreed upon in writing." Howard blinked. I continued. "Want to know who wrote that clause?" Mendez stepped forward. Mr. Carter did. The woman gasped. Buzz-cut deputy, I think his name tag said, Wells finally spoke. "Sir, ma'am, unless you have proof that this man is violating criminal code, we have no jurisdiction. Civil disputes should go through county code enforcement, not 911. Howard turned red. "But he's smug. He's ruining the view. That's emotional distress." I raised my hand. "Howard, I have a suggestion. Go home, close your blinds, and maybe plant a tree." Wells stifled a laugh. Mendez didn't bother to hide his smile. Howard fumed. "This isn't over. "Oh, I'm sure it's not," I said. "But you're going to lose every single time you bring it up, because the law is very clear, and I am the law, well, at least this small solar-powered part of it. By the end of the week, the system was live. 12 panels. 2 Tesla Powerwalls. A fully self-contained energy solution. And the kicker? My electric meter spun backward for the first time since I moved in. Word spread fast. The incident had been recorded not by me, but by a local who just happened to be driving by with a dashcam. The clip went semi-viral on a community Facebook group. The comments were gold. "That HOA dude got served." "You messed with the wrong nerd, Howard." Carter 1, HOA 0. A few days later, I started getting emails. People who'd been harassed by their HOAs. People curious about going off-grid. Even a couple of local news outlets wanted interviews. I declined most of them. I wasn't looking for fame, just freedom. But the real kicker came in the mail. A formal apology from the county's legal office. Apparently, Keller had tried to escalate the issue with a nuisance suit. It was laughed out of court in less than a day. The county attorney even attached a note. "Thanks for the Carter addendum. Never thought it would come in handy so soon." I pinned that letter on the wall of my shed, right next to the inverter. It started subtly at first. A few passive-aggressive flyers taped to the trail sign leading into my property. "Keep our community beautiful. Say no to panel pollution." One had a cartoon of a cabin surrounded by angry black clouds labeled solar radiation. It was laughable, almost cute. Then came the drone. At first, I heard a faint hum, like a distant mosquito with propellers. It hovered just above the tree line, then dipped low, circling twice before disappearing. I thought it might be a curious hiker. But the next day, it returned, and this time, I caught a glimpse of the logo on its side, HOA Security Division. That was new. I didn't bother chasing it. Instead, I set up a gain cam and mounted a small dish antenna I'd been saving for the Starlink install. I was already monitoring solar efficiency and battery storage remotely. A little aerial surveillance wouldn't hurt. 3 days later, I had the footage. The drone was being piloted from the clubhouse roof of the Sunset Hills HOA. Not subtle at all. And likely illegal, given that it flew over private property without consent. I drove down to the county sheriff's office with the footage on a flash drive. Deputy Wells met me at the front, sipping coffee and trying to hide a grin. "They're really going all in, huh?" he said as he escorted me to Mendez's office. Mendez watched the footage silently. When the drone dipped low enough to peek through my second-floor window, he exhaled sharply and rubbed his temple. "All right," he said. "That's a violation. We'll take care of it." True to his word, the drone didn't return. But I could feel the HOA ramping up. They weren't done just regrouping. A week later, I received a registered letter from a law firm in the city. It was printed on high-gloss stationery with gold trim around the firm's name. Keller Partners, LLP. Howard's last name wasn't a coincidence. The letter accused me of creating a visually disruptive installation that negatively impacted the collective aesthetic experience of adjacent community members and cited some obscure county nuisance code from all 1993. The penalty? A cease and desist order and a fine of $15,000 for visual encroachment. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my tea. After composing myself, I drafted a reply. It was 6 pages long, footnoted, cross-referenced, and loaded with case law. I copied the county zoning office, the local magistrate, and the Regional Clean Energy Initiative. I concluded it with the phrase, "See attached precedent, Carter versus Stonewood HOA, 2016. That was the case I'd won 8 years earlier, the one that started all this. Ironically, Howard had probably never heard of it. 3 days later, the law firm sent a formal retraction. But the battle had shifted. The HLA knew they couldn't touch me through legal means. So they started attacking the public narrative. I noticed a sudden influx of posts on local Facebook groups and community forums. Warnings about rogue developers. Posts about off-grid radicals who were undermining community safety. One even claimed that my panels could explode during a storm. I decided to answer just once with data. I wrote a full post detailing my installation, including safety specs, fire ratings, distance from property lines, and system shut-off procedures. I ended it with a drone shot photo of the cabin at sunset, panels gleaming like polished obsidian. That post got over 3,000 likes in 24 hours. Suddenly, strangers were showing up at my trailhead, asking for advice. One couple had driven 2 hours just to see the setup. I started giving tours on weekends.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Just to see the setup. I started giving tours on weekends. Not formally, just friendly chats over tea and technical details. I showed them the inverter system, the battery readouts, and a backup manual pump for when I disconnected from grid water. Word spread quickly. The HLA did not appreciate that. One evening, just after dusk, I returned from town to find a row of identical signs staked into the dirt just outside my property line. They were printed in bold red letters. Warning: you are entering a non-compliant zone. This area is not affiliated with Sunset Hills. Proceed at your own risk. I took them down. All 15 of them. The next day, I printed my own sign and planted it right at the trailhead. Welcome to Carter Ridge. 100% code compliant. 100% off-grid. 100% not controlled by W. People in khakis. It became a bit of a tourist spot. Someone even made t-shirts. Still, the tension grew. One morning, I received a notice from the power company, a formal request to inspect my property due to grid irregularities. That made no sense. I wasn't feeding into the grid. My panels were isolated, completely standalone. I called them. The rep on the phone was apologetic. Apparently, someone had reported me for unauthorized net metering. When they realized I wasn't even connected to the main grid anymore, they withdrew the request. But someone, probably Howard, was trying to paint me as a rogue operator. I started locking everything. Shed, gate, even the solar combiner boxes. I installed more cameras, upgraded the cabin door, and built a second battery room underground just in case. Then, 2 months after the first 911 call, I got an email from the county commissioner. He wanted to meet. We sat at a diner on the edge of town. He was a tall man with tired eyes and a deep voice. "You've stirred up quite the storm," he said, between sips of coffee. I nodded. "I didn't mean to—" "No, but you exposed something we've been ignoring: HOA overreach. Especially in rural zones. They're not supposed to patrol outside their borders." He told me there was going to be a public hearing. Not just about me, but about the zoning regulations I helped write. Apparently, Sunset Hills was lobbying for an amendment, one that would expand HOA influence to include adjacent visual corridors. If it passed, it could set a precedent for dozens of other counties. I agreed to speak. The hearing was packed. Howard was there, front row, arms crossed. Several of his fellow board members sat behind him, stern-faced. On the other side, a crowd of off-gridders, builders, students, environmentalists, and even a few solar contractors sat with clipboards and signs. I recognized half of them from my weekend tours. I spoke for 20 minutes. I explained the purpose of the Carter Addendum, how it protected independence while still enforcing safety. I read letters from neighbors who supported my build. I showed graphs declining utility costs, carbon offsets, emergency resilience during blackouts. And I ended with a question. If an HOA can reach beyond its borders, what's to stop it from claiming control over everything in sight? The room was silent. Then, applause. The board voted that night. The amendment failed unanimously. Afterward, Mendez found me in the parking lot. "They might leave you alone now," he said. "They might not," I replied. He nodded. "You still got that binder?" I lifted it like a shield. Always. As I drove home, the sun dipped behind the ridge, casting long shadows across the panels. They gleamed like sentinels, quiet, constant, and entirely mine. The HOA had learned something critical that summer. You don't bring code complaints to a man who wrote the code.